お前がドクターか。自己紹介をしよう。コードネームはソーンズ。本日よりズボンの裾がまくれている。気にするな。いつものことだ。仕事の前にこれを飲むといい。よし。これで薬効時間中はドクターもサボることはないだろう。目を凝らせ。これこそがイベリアのデストレッツァ。
Hello everybody, my name is Ludwig and this is Operator Overview. The operator I'll be reviewing is Thorns, so without further ado, let's get right into it. Thorns is a 6-star guard of the Lord branch. Trait of the archetype can launch range attacks that deal 80% of normal attack. So Thorns is a ground unit with 2 block that has an extended range, similar to a marksman sniper, but not quite a marksman sniper range. But this allows you to place operators in front of Thorns, and he can still attack enemies in front of that operator. So he can function with operators in front of him, unlike other guards who have to be directly attacking the enemy or blocking or need a skill to have range. He doesn't need that, just his trait, he gets an extended range. Very, very useful. His stats are pretty alright. Nothing too crazy. Some nice res, which is great. Relatively normal DP cost. Overall, pretty standard. Not bad. Moving on. Operator profile. Thorns is from the faction Iberia. His operator description: Thorns, guard operator of Rhodes Island, wastes not an ounce of energy, calculating each strike meticulously. Operator quote: he'll cooperate according to his own interpretation of the commands. Profile. Thorns, a frontline combatant for Rhodes Island, is proficient in swordsmanship and pharmacology. Born in the Iberian hinterland, Thorns left his hometown in the midst of local religious strife. After leaving the Iberian region, he was invited to join Rhodes Island. The above section describing the situation in Iberia was self-reported by Thorns and has not been fully verified. His character voice, English, is Xavier, I can't pronounce that, I apologize, and Japanese, Kaito Ishikawa. Alright, moving on. Operator backstory. So, Isidore is Thorn's real name. The Iberian Islander is an exceptional swordsman of the Destreza school, a skill that should be only practiced among the local Liberi traditionally. Since his childhood, Isidore was raised up by Aulus, the Aegir priest, who cherished his swordsmanship through the combination of his own toxic. Eventually, the two split due to ideological differences, in which Isidore made the correct choice, as Aulus is a bishop of the Church of the Deep who blindly venerates the Seaborn. After fleeing from his homeland, Isidore was recruited by Rhodes Island under the recommendation by his friend Elysium, given the codename Thorns, as a full-time operator. He is both a competent field combatant and a talented chemist who masters his toxicology to concoct various medicinal compounds or weaponry, one of which includes a potent neurotoxin infused into his blade. Thorns is also an accomplished alchemist, a lost art in Iberia that was forbidden in current era. Thorns hasn't forgotten his goal of facing his mentor one day. He will have to return to the Iberian Dark Coast and have a duel between him and Aulus. So, I'm going to spoil some CN spoilers, but I will also have this in the title. So, Thorns does get an altar later. I believe the event is Exodus from the Pale Sea, and he, I believe, is an alchemist, a new sort of trait or new sort of branch, I believe, on the specialist class, I believe. He's a alchemist in the specialist class. Pretty cool, and I think I haven't read the story yet, because it's not on Ian yet, but it probably has to do with Aulus and some sort of... It's probably going to tie into his backstory, of course. So that's pretty cool. And he's one of the supporting, or I think main characters in that event. So and he gets a new altar, which is great. So he gets an alternate, just like Blaze is getting an altar as well. So overall, pretty cool. So, alright. Next, his debut event and banner. He debuted on the side story Heart of the Surging Flame rerun event, and his headhunting banner was Unbound Reflux. Moving on. Module, his Lord X module. All Lords got an X module, I believe, with chapter 14 or episode 14 of the main story. each Lord module is, in short, just great. His module is Lord X, the Salt in the Sand. Stage 1 gives him some HP, attack, and attack speed. Pretty nice. His new trait, he attacks deal an additional 10% attack as arts damage. Gives a traditionally physical damage dealer some extra arts DPS, which is great. And then stage 2 gives him some more HP, attack, and attack speed, and his talent is improved. Nerve Corrosion attacks poison target, dealing 125 arts damage per second for 3 seconds, and stacking up to 3 times. Damage is doubled against ranged enemies. So the big factor here is the stacking. So we will go over that in a second. For stage 3, he gets some HP, attack, and attack speed, and it's improved again. It's the same as the previous stage 2, except it's 135 arts of damage per second, and it stacks up to 4 times. So the biggest thing is the stacking. So his talent 1 has a arts damage over time. So when he attacks enemies, they take extra arts damage per second for 3 seconds, but now it stacks. With his module, it stacks, which is really, really great. Yeah, so the biggest thing is that it stacks now. Previously, it does not stack. Without his module, stage 2 or 3, his talent would not stack. So with module, it will stack. So his module is an extremely good improvement. Like, just like with any module, if you use the character, the more you use the character, the more value a module will give you in the first place. So if you use the character a lot, there's really no point to it, I guess. It depends on the module. Some modules, though, are better just per character. This is one of those characters. Each of the different lords all got a module, and they all are very, very good. They all improve the character in some way, and it's a noticeable increase in their performance against many different types of situations and circumstances. And Thorns is no different. He just becomes plain out just better. He has more health, he has more attack, and he attacks faster. And now his talents can stack. So overall, if you use the character a lot, this is a really powerful talent for Thorns. It's very, very worthwhile. I have stage 3 for all the lords, but if you use Thorns a lot, just like with any character, and you want to make him just better in general, even though he's already great, this is a great module to grab, to upgrade. So going over his talent 1, which improves at pot 5. So talent 1, Nerve Corrosion, improves at potential 5. It poisons the targets when attacking, dealing 125 plus 15 at pot 5. Arts damage to them per second, lasting 3 seconds. Damage is doubled against ranged enemies. It's pretty simple. The biggest thing is, we kind of went over it. With his module, he can stack it. Without module, this is a non-stacking. It just deals arts damage over time. So it would deal 125 per second for 3 seconds, which is great. And it's, even without module, it's still a powerful talent. Basically, it allows him to improve his DPS, and it also allows him to contribute against high defense enemies. So extremely high defense enemies typically have lower resistance, which then means they'll take more damage, hopefully from the arts. So but he is a mainly physical damage dealer, so the arts damage is just extra, like the cherry on top. It's just nice. It's nice to have. It can come in handy against high defense enemies because they typically have lower res. But it's just really nice. The biggest thing though is with the module. His module makes that insane. It just becomes really, really good. The extra stacking allows you to just, stack it. So when it can stack up to 4 times, he's just going to be doing more damage. Because of the attack speed increases, and depending on his skills, he's going to hit them multiple times, and then you'll easily stack up to 4 times very quickly, because he rapidly will attack them. He also will deal extra attack as arts damage with just the first stage of his X module, Lord X. So overall, an amazing module, and I highly recommend it. But his talent 1 by itself is pretty good. Typically, it's great. With module, it's even better, but it's still good by itself. Arts damage per second, you can't go wrong with extra DPS. Next, talent 2, Echoes of Ancestral Waves, improves at potential 3. If this unit has an attack for the last 2 seconds, restores 3.5% plus 0.5% max HP every second. This is a self-sustained talent. It allows Thorns to sustain himself, but the biggest issue is the inconsistency and unreliability of the talent. The problem is Thorns has, with his trait, as a Lord Guard extended range. So that means, and it's easier for enemies to just come into his range because he can attack them from further away and he can engage them. But as long as he's attacking, he will not use this talent too. He will not be able to heal himself. So the problem you might face is if there's enemies and they keep coming into his range, and then you deal with them, and then there's another enemy, but that's easy to do because he has a long range. He has a quite extended range, so unless he can either deal with them very quickly, which typically he can, it depends on the enemies, or if he has some way of healing with like a medic or something, you're just not gonna, it's just too inconsistent and unreliable, but it can be pretty useful on environmental damage stages. Like for the first beginning, before you have a medic out or before you get a defender, like a guardian defender out, before you get that, he can heal himself. As long as he has defeated the enemies quickly enough that he can get the 2 seconds that he hasn't attacked and then restore HP. Overall, it's pretty nice. It allows him to sustain himself, but he does have to, it's a little inconsistent and unreliable. Overall, it's a pretty good talent though. For mastery recommendation, skill 3 is his signature standout skill. It's an AFK skill, so that does extremely high consistent physical damage, and it just makes him, it's just what he's mainly known for. It increases his attack and attack speed. Thorn's attacks no longer deal reduced damage, like his trait makes it so he deals 80% of his attack as damage. And then upon the second activation of the skill and afterwards, the skill has unlimited duration and the bonuses are twice the base amount. It also increases his range, so like I said earlier, he doesn't have a marksman sniper range. With skill 3, he does have a marksman sniper range, which is quite far. Overall, it's just really good. It has unlimited duration after the second use. The bonuses are doubled, so he attacks even faster, he does more damage and he attacks faster. His attacks no longer deal reduced damage. I mean, overall, it's just his standout skill. For skill 2, I put it's a big maybe. His skill 3 is so powerful that there's really no real reason you would want skill 2 in the first place, but I put it there. It's unique. It's a unique defensive skill. He stops attacking. It will slightly extends Thorn's range, increases his attack a bit. It significantly increases his defense, and when attacked by an enemy's normal attack, he launches long-range spikes at up to 4 enemies in his range. It's a unique skill. It's not necessarily bad, it's just his third skill is so much stronger that it's kind of like the same situation with quite a few characters, but like Moinar, typically you just use him for his skill 3 because even if his skill 2 is okay and not bad, you don't need it really. You can only bring one skill to a stage, so typically why would you bring 2 if you could bring 3? But it does have its uses and it is interesting. The biggest unique factor is that increases his defense and he stops attacking. Because Thorn stops attacking, he can actually make pretty good use of his second talent, like we were talking about earlier, the one that heals him as long as he stops attacking. So as long as Thorns hasn't attacked in 2 seconds, he will then heal himself over time, just by himself. This skill basically enables that sort of playstyle where he can basically heal himself, and because he's not technically attacking, and enemies have to attack him first so he can launch long-range spikes. The long-range spikes are affected by his trait, so he will do 80% of attack as damage, and not full damage. So he does deal reduced damage, but in general, it's still pretty good. But it's not typically brought over his third skill, and it's sort of like if you want to just use him a little differently and utilize him in a different way than his typical third skill, it's not bad, it's just more defensive, and it just does not stand up compared to his third. But it is still pretty interesting and pretty fun to use actually. His skill 1 is a pretty basic skill. It's just an attack increase, so I honestly would just leave it at level 7. There's really no point, compared to his skill 2 and 3, there's really no point to even use the resources to level it up unless you really like the character, which is a valid reason. I've done that with a few characters where I just level them up to M9 just because why not? Even if I know I will probably never actually use their other skills, but it's for fun, so why not? So, as we were going over, skill 1, attack up Y, auto recovery, manual trigger, 30 seconds, initial SP 15, SP cost 30, duration 30 seconds. It's attack plus 100%. That's all it does. It makes him do more damage. You can't go wrong with it, but it does. It's in this weird position where it does something, but also does like nothing at the same time. So yeah, he gets a damage increase, but like it's just not that interesting. So, moving on, skill 2. Protective Spikes. Auto recovery, manual trigger, 30 to 40 seconds skill. Initial SP 10, SP cost 25, duration 40 seconds. The thing about this skill, it is quite a low SP cost for a very decent duration. 40 seconds and only a 25 SP cost is actually pretty good. He stops attacking as we talked about earlier. Attack plus 60%, defense plus 110%. When hit by an enemy, his normal attack launches long range spikes at up to 4 enemies in front. 0.6 second cooldown. So he does get in a little bit of extended range, but it's not a ton of range. He only gains about like 2 total tiles, so not crazy. It's a defensive skill as we were talking about earlier, and he does reduce damage due to his trait, so he deals 80% damage of his normal attack. But it does allow him to heal himself because technically he is, quote, not attacking. So that means he can trigger his second talent, allowing him to heal himself. As I said, it's defensive and it's pretty interesting. It just doesn't really compare to his third. So let's go over that. Skill 3, Destreza. Offensive recovery, manual trigger, 30 seconds slash unlimited. Initial SP 0, SP cost 15, duration 30 seconds. Unlimited duration after the second use. So, attack range expands to the range the same as a marksman sniper, so think Exusia, Cruz, etc. Attack plus 60%, attack speed plus 25, and range attacks no longer deal reduced damage. Upon the second activation of this skill and afterwards, this skill has unlimited duration and its bonuses are twice the base amount. So, it's an offensive recovery, so Thorns is required to attack enemies first. So he needs to have enemies in his range that he can actually attack. So, and then after you attack them 15 times to charge the skill, you use the skill once, you wait 30 seconds, it gets the first bonuses, the range expansion, the attack and attack speed, and the attacks no longer deal reduced damage. Then, after you charge the you wait, you have to charge the skill again. So the second time you activate it though, he gets the range expansion, he gets the range attacks no longer deal reduced damage, but the attack and attack speed are doubled. So now he gains, instead of plus 60% attack, he gains 120% attack. Instead of plus 25 attack speed, he gains 50 attack speed. Overall, it makes him he does more damage. Does more damage and attacks faster. And he no longer deals reduced damage, so he no longer deals 80%, like his normal trait. He no longer deals 80% of his attack. And his attack range expands to a marksman sniper. It is a signature skill, and it makes him a very powerful lane holder. It just allows him, if the enemy is not defeated before they even reach him, they're gonna be pretty weak, or weakened at least, because he attacks so quickly. If you include his arts damage over time with his first talent, I mean, he's just gonna be doing damage and extra damage, and he's just gonna. It's just it's so powerful at lane holding. He can just sit in an area and cover with his extra range. He can just cover basically the whole lane and then some. And he can deal with drones. Aerial enemies, he can deal with those, no problem. Overall, I mean, it's just really, and he's a ground unit, so he's not even a sniper, and he can just, from the ground, he can just deal with ranged enemies, and he can still block enemies if they come in his range, if required. So either way, it's just really, combined, it's so many features. It just does what you would want a lane holder basically to do. It makes basically his archetype makes great use of his trait as a Lord Guard. So in general, it's just amazing as a skill. For his synergies, placing an operator in front of him can really help him when he's charging his skill 3. His skill 3 has a little bit of time in between where you have to wait, so having an operator in front of him can really help him, because otherwise he could leak. He doesn't have his damage output and he's not yet at max effectiveness, so he could leak enemies because while he does have 2 block count, his damage is not as high, so they could just walk past him if they're really fast, etc. So having just another unit, great units to put in front of him would be Blaze is a good unit. We talked about Blaze. She's a great lane holder as well, but she can help because she has 3 block and that can help him. Guardian defenders are great because he can't heal himself, so having some type of like Saria and Shu can heal him, which is great, and they can then block for him and he can still attack past them, which is great. Scotty the Corrupting Heart affects all operators, but she does increase Thorns, and with her skill 2 increases his attack and defense, which can't hurt, especially, and it really helps him due to his fast attack speed. Allowing him to just do more damage is always great. Suzerain's skill 3 can apply Fragile to enemies, and due to her being able to slow them down, and then they take more damage from all sources, so in general that helps everybody, but it also helps him. He doesn't really have too many synergies. He's very self-sufficient as an operator. He can kind of just do his own thing. You place him down, you use his skill 3 once, and then you wait, and then you use his skill 3 again, and then you basically can AFK the entire stage. So you can then just go do something in the meantime, because he'll probably just beat the stage depending on what it is. So yeah, that's really about it for synergies. For criteria, so this is how I break it down. Subjective is basically any reason that is subjective, and objective is objective. So for subjective, this is the way I pull for characters. Mainly I pull for characters based on what I like. If I like the character, I pull on them. If I don't like the character, I don't usually, because I mean that's how I kind of just do it in general, because I don't really need people anymore. But and then the objective is more for people who actually may want to, if they want a more objective view of why they'd bring this character instead of just the character, they like the character instead. So I personally like this character because character design, lore, artwork, voice, presence of story, faction, character relations, style, really anything that is subjective. In general, I think Thorns is a pretty cool character. Now, he hasn't had much story, I don't think. So, besides his now new CN event with his altar and stuff, but he's pretty cool. He's similar. I really like his second outfit, actually, the one you see in the background. I think it fits his character pretty well. It reminds me of like this explorer/archaeologist theme. Just like Moinar, he combines swordsmanship, and instead of using arts like Moinar, he actually uses that neurotoxin. His blade is infused with a neurotoxin, so that's what he's doing. He is actually he has normal proficiency in arts. So he's actually just using chemicals, basically, which is actually pretty cool. But I always like swords, so swordsman and all that is pretty cool to me. So, and that's kind of the subjective. For the objective, there really isn't. This is basically more for when, let's say you're a newer player and you're trying to choose between characters, but there's a lot of characters to choose from, and who should you pull on? You know, the objective is more for that sort of unbiased, like, I need this character because I'm missing a lane holder, so who should I get, you know? Because, I mean, I could tell you a ton of people to get, and but then sometimes that doesn't help, you know? Of course, we'd all want to get some characters that are really strong, but then we don't, you know, and then we gotta upgrade them, and then it's too different. When you're early game, you don't have to. This game is not, like, technically the resources are unlimited. You can always eventually farm resources to upgrade a character, but let's say you are a newer player and I want to get the medals, but who do I have in my squad? Who should I get to get the medals, because I don't have the operators to deal with that. Yes, there are always different strategies, but in general, like when I played the game, when I first started, it was always hard to do the medals even while following guides sometimes, because I just didn't have the operators. And so that's kind of what this objective note thing is for. It's for that sort of, you need them because you want them to fulfill a specific role, and you don't really care about the subjective. This is for more people that just want the facts. He is a unique branch. He's a Lord Guard. He has physical damage per second. He has self-sustain. He has some synergies, not a lot, but he has some. He has high consistent physical damage. He has arts damage over time. He has ranged attacks. There's really, the biggest thing is that he costs a decent amount. So you do have to elite to him to gain his third skill. I think this is a highly worthwhile investment. His third skill is really good. You may not have to master it. It can still be used without mastering it. So the skill will still function without masteries. Mastery 3s just make it a lot better, but you can function fine without mastery. Also, his module makes it even better. His whole character just becomes better with module. So if you're newer, I still would highly recommend him as a character. He's just so powerful. And so he's just reliable. You can use him on almost any stage and he'll just do damage. So there's that new player selector thing. I think I got one as well, but basically I think it has Saria, Exusia, Silver Ash, Thorns, Blaze, Mountain, I believe. I think that's it. I don't know if it has anybody else. Out of all of them, I really would highly recommend, so first I think you should look at whoever you think looks cool. If you like the character, just get them. I mean, I don't care really. Like, if you like the character, do it. That's the way I would do it probably. So, but if you want like my objective take on it, I think Thorns in the long run is the best out of all of them. The biggest reason is that I think most of them are relatively replaceable. Like, Saria is great for utility and in general, but I can replace Saria early game with Kiora, Gummy, Spot. There's a few others probably, but for defenders, Kiora is a 4-star, Gummy's a 4-star, and Spot's a 3-star. Are they going to be as good? Definitely not, but they will function. So for Blaze, there's not too many great exceptions. I guess Popukar. There might be some other Centurion guards. So not too many. Mountain doesn't really have a replacement that's that cheap. Exusia can kind of be replaced by Cruz. Of course, Exusia will do more burst damage and has better damage and attack speed and all that, but Cruz is a 3-star that everybody gets. So in general, of course, I'm just saying, in general, I find it really hard to replace Thorns. That's why I'm rating him so high in the objective. So yes, he is a bit expensive. You have to elite to him, and then you have to get his third skill at least leveled up. But you could still probably wait on the mastery, and it would still probably function perfectly fine. But I recommend him just because in the long run, he will always be reliable. He's always been a reliable operator. He will always, basically, for now, he will always stay a reliable pick. You'll use him because it's kind of a easy, put him down, use his skill twice, and then basically forget he exists because he'll just constantly do damage. You don't even have to really do anything. You just leave him there to do stuff. So that's kind of why I put him so high up, because he could basically, him and Mountain can basically win you stages just by themselves. Both of them are extremely high value, though Blaze and Mountain require only Elite 1, so they're cheaper, but then Thorns, for them to be at pretty much max effectiveness with their main skill. But Thorns in the long run, I think, is just more valuable if you care about that sort of thing. That's just my take on it, personally. Because if I was a new player, I'd probably pick Thorns and just upgrade him to Elite 2 with whatever if I can get, as long as I get the resources, and then I would just master him later, but at least get him Elite 2 just to get his skill, because it's just so good. But that's just my take on it. But first and foremost, look at what you have on your squad. Look at who you think is cool. If you like Exusia, grab Exusia. If you like Saria, get Saria. Go with what you like personally. But that is my take on that sort of new player selector thing. I would pick Thorns. Though Silver Ash is also really good. Silver Ash is a more burst oriented operator. So I'm going to now touch on the other Lord Guards. So there are 3 total 6-star Lord Guards currently. There's Thorns, Silver Ash, and Kwabai. All 3 are amazing operators, but they each excel they will each get their own overview later, but they each excel. I'm just going to touch on a little bit of it now. Each of them are Lord Guards, so they all have range attacks that they can deal as ground units. They're ground units that deal ranged attacks. But each of them specialize in very different areas, I think, the way I've seen them. Silver Ash is first and foremost a heli drop unit, so you place Silver Ash down, and then you typically wait for his 3rd skill, and then he does a giant AoE slash. He hits a lot of enemies in a big range, but it only lasts about 30 seconds, but he does a lot of damage. It has a lot of burst damage. That is Silver Ash, and typically after that you retreat him. So heli drop means you place him down, use his skill, and then you basically retreat him. So he's not really on this field very long. So he's not very consistent. He's not a lane holder. Thorns is on the opposite end. Thorns is not a heli drop. Thorns is a operator you need to place down, and then you need to wait for his skill to charge, and then you need to wait for his skill to charge again, and then he stays on the field. He lane holds. He will stay on the field, and he will consistently deal damage and will be consistently dealing with waves of enemies while holding the lane. Kwabai is a sort of mixture in between. She is a unit that you also have to place down like Thorns and stays on the field typically. She is not a heli drop unit with a very powerful burst skill, which can be even more powerful than Silver Ash's burst, but is not in an AoE. It's not an area of effect skill, and it requires a little bit of setup for Kwabai. So she needs a little bit more work, but if you can get that payoff, it's an exceptional amount of burst damage. So Silver Ash is a heli drop AoE burst damage unit. Thorns is a consistent damage dealer who's a lane holder who requires to stay on the field. Kwabai also needs to stay on the field and requires a little bit more setup than Thorns or Silver Ash, but she can do an extremely high amount of damage with the proper setup. Specifically with Suzerain, and because Kwabai gains due to her talents gains bonuses based on enemies that are slowed, I believe, and bound, I believe, or slowed and bind maybe, but one of those. And Suzerain slows enemies, so then her talent, she'll do more damage, and then this ramps up extremely high, and she does a lot of arts damage. Mix that with like somebody who can lower resistance like Logos, and you have an extremely Logos, Suzerain, and Kwabai. That's an extremely powerful combo that can do a lot more burst damage than Silver Ash, but it's not an AoE, and more damage than Thorns, but it's not as consistently applied. Thorns is consistent damage, Silver Ash is burst, Kwabai requires setup but can do an extremely high amount of burst. That's how I sort of see it. They'll each get their own overview in general later, but for right now that's sort of how I think of them as all 3 Lord Guards are exceptional units. You really can't go wrong with any of the Lord Guards. They're all great. In conclusion, Thorns is a powerful and reliable operator. There's really not much else about him. He's just really powerful and does kind of everything you'd want a Lord Guard or really guard to do in the first place. He's a ground unit that does ranged attacks with high physical damage and extra arts damage over time. He has self-sustain, he has range, everything really. He's an AFK, he's basically an AFK, place him down, use his skill twice, and basically forget about it. And that's really good. You don't really need to do much else. He just does everything you could want him to do. So, in general, I highly recommend getting him if you can, or eventually picking him up. And with his module, it just makes him even better. His trivia, his leitmotif, El Brillo Solitario. Thorns as skill 3, Destreza, is named after a school of Spanish fencing and means dexterity or skill, notably in Spanish. The school's first name is something Destreza, meaning the Supreme Art, which was the skill's first name, which was originally called the Supreme Art, but was changed to Destreza. Thorns is the first and currently only Aegir to be based on in his case, a sea urchin. Thorns is one of the few operators whose animal they are based on are absent in their Elite 2 skin, although the spikes on his sword's handguard are shaped like a sea urchin's spikes. Thorns is the first Year 2 operator to receive an alternate version. So, in general, Thorns is a great unit, and there's not much else about him. He's just reliable, powerful, and I highly recommend getting him. So the next two operator overviews will be Chongyu next, and then Mudrock. So I thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a good night.
抽出液の分離と解析はほとんど済んだ。次は純化作業だが、実際の効果についてはまだ実験が必要だ。なんだ、ドクター、俺の髪がどうかしたか？髪が爆発しているだと？気にするな。実験の失敗は一度や二度のことじゃない。常に頭は動かし続けろ。思考を放棄してしまえば、自身の急所を相手に委ねるようなものだ。俺はかつてそのように教わった。たまたま今も記憶に残っているだけだけどな。俺の種族は、本来今とは全く異なる容姿をしていたんだ。俺たちの皮膚は甲羅のように硬く、髪は流水のように滑らかだった。しかし灼熱の日光と乾燥した空気に当てられ、最後には今の通りに変化したというわけだ。信じたか？悪いな。今のは冗談さ。ラテラーの宗教の信徒でないなら、イベリアへは行かない方がいい。彼らの言う最も純粋な信仰は、あの土地に根付くものだ。現地の人々の敬虔さには、もしかしたらラテラーノ人ですら引け目を感じるほどだ。俺はこの話とは関係ないさ。ドクター、イベリア懲罰軍の歴史を知っているか？少しでも噂を耳にしたことがあるなら知っているだろう。あの土地に住む者たちには、その冷たく厳かな開白の建造物からは想像もできないほどの狂気をはらんでいることを。攻撃の角度、回避の軌道、防御の姿勢、すべての動作は計算づくで、無駄は一つもない。これこそがデストレッツァーというものだ。お前の指揮スタイルと似ていると思わないか、ドクター。休憩中はリラックスして何も考えずに風や日に当たってみろ、だと。いいだろう。たまに試してみるのも悪くないかもしれない。さあ、こっちに上がってきて。ここに吹く風は故郷を思い出させてくれるな。まさかな。俺も釣られて寝てしまったのか。素早く効率的に敵の行動力を削ぎ、最小の被害で勝利をもぎ取る。お前の指揮については完全に理解しているつもりだ。だから攻撃に合わせてこの麻痺性の神経毒を使っているんだが、何か問題でも？完璧な結果だ。まさかこれもお前の計算のうちか？任務完了。正確かつ効率のいい指揮だったな、ドクター。髪？ああ、整えたばかりのはずなのにまた乱れているとは。